But it's also not just the advice that is different, right? It's also how that advice is delivered or communicated.
Sure.
Right. And here's some facts here. So just for the baby boomers, right, born between 1946 and 1964, they usually prefer to discuss their finances, in person, right? They're more old fashioned. They want to see that person, right, and really see what advice, if it makes sense for them or not.
Yeah. Shake hands and
But Generation Z, right, born between anywhere 1997 to 2012, they prefer to check their phone, right? They're more adapted to technology, right? They want to go on their laptop. They don't want to have that conversation, right? What's the point if I can just go on my phone? It can save me some time. I get my answer right then and there.
Hello, Apriem family, and welcome to episode 14 of Apriem Financial Cents. In this episode, I sit down with one of our financial planners, Cole Ducote, and we talk a little bit about the differences between generations and both the types of advice that they receive, as well as the way that they prefer to receive that advice. There's been lots of changes and things that have happened over the years, and it's just a really fun breakdown as we kind of talk from two different generations to each other about our experiences working as advisors with different clients. Hope you like it. Cole, if you were to think about before you started working at Apriem, right, coming into the business, I know you were already really familiar with the industry because of your mom, right, and having very having relationships there your whole life, right, growing up and being around finance. So I think you already had probably a better perspective than at least I did of the industry and what the role was all about. But have you seen or felt that your perspective on not just the industry, but like the actual job of an advisor has changed as compared to what you kind of thought it was before getting started?
Oh, definitely. I mean, yeah, kind of like you said before, I definitely had a little advantage there, given some, my family's in the industry.
Yeah.
I definitely knew what the industry was about, what I needed to do to become successful.
Right.
But I didn't really know that until I really got here, right? And the biggest thing is really just sitting down with clients, really getting to know them and know their different financial behaviors, because everyone's different, right? Everyone's financial plan is way different. We're going to talk about that later, given a younger individual compared to an older individual.
Right, how the needs change.
Yeah. But yeah, I guess the biggest thing was just really dealing with clients, right? Really getting to know them and understanding, their past and what we can do for them.
Yeah. I think, for me, when I thought about, advisors prior, it was so confusing because it was kind of one of those like, well, you think about what you see on TV, right? And like I don't know, buy or sell, or, calling and say, convincing somebody to buy something or sell something, right? Like from the movies and those types of things. And then on top of it, you have like, there's financial advisors, and then there's like agents, and then there's stockbrokers, and there's wealth managers, and there's like all these different terms that are out there, like a registered investment advisor or an investment advisor or a certified financial analyst, certified financial planner. Right? And it was so confusing. It's like, what is the difference between all of those? Mm-hmm. I think that was one of the biggest things that once I really kind of got in the industry and got started, that I started to, realize kind of what the differences were there. But then at the same time, I feel like the industry itself has made things sound much more difficult than I think that it actually is or needs to be.
Yeah, no, right? For sure. I think especially being younger, you kind of learn a lot of things in the textbook.
Right.
And that's one way of learning it, and then it could be way different, in person, and that's definitely a big difference too. Maybe be a different type of term or how to really understand that concept. It's different from the textbook given compared to like reality. In person and really explaining that to the client properly.
I know we were talking the other day, and you had kind of mentioned that there's a lot of a lean towards talking about things like behavioral finance. Mm-hmm. Have you found any of the things you're learning about behavioral finance? Are you catching like correlation or similarities when you're actually working with clients, because you're getting to do both kind of hand in hand? Mm-hmm. Anything along those lines like really stuck out to you?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a lot of terms out there that you can relate to, but I think the one biggest that kind of seeing where the market is today, and since I've been here the last couple of years, dealing with clients and what they've have thought in their finances, I would say just really the greed and fear. I feel like we always bring that up in meetings. It's a good scale to really judge how people are feeling, during like top of the market or when times are bad during the bottom of the market, and what they should be doing. And it's really hard, for people to grasp that idea, especially at the bottom where, it's a good time for us to be, to find opportunity for them and buy on that low end. But that's not really how the brain works, right? They say green and they want to buy more. But, sometimes it's better to kind of like sell and take some profits there and wait for a better time to enter the market.
Yeah, I think that's very intuitive because it's very true. I think even us, even in our shoes, it's really easy to fall victim to all the emotions that happen in the market, right? And it just feels like, hey, that's going up. It's been going up. Everyone's buying it. Everybody's talking about it. We had the news on today, and they were talking about this, right? Like, that's got to be what the next best thing to do is, right? And oftentimes, it can be the exact opposite, right? Oftentimes when it feels like that's what we should be doing, we probably should either just sit on our hands and do nothing, right? Or possibly be, like you said, taking profits, right? And then the reverse is true, right? We think about like, periods of time like March of 2020 when everyone's stuck at home and, we're all, in great fear of the pandemic and, economy's basically shut down. Felt like the worst possible time that anybody should be in the stock market, right? It felt like that's like when you should be exiting. And yet we look back historically and it's one of those, no, that was probably about the best time to buy when everything was the scariest that it was going to get, at least from a financial perspective.
The fear of missing out, right? And just learning or seeing a lot of people doing it, right? You have a couple of friends who give you some advice and you have that fear that you don't want to miss out, so you have to go in. Not necessarily the case, right? You really want to sit down and really see what the market can do for you at that time,
right?
And see if it's the best time to enter.
So I think that's kind of a good point for us to go off of as we kind of dig into today's real topic, right? And that topic has to do with different generations, and I think the different perspective on what a financial advisor's role is in both the recommendations we make, as well as maybe how we communicate and what we communicate. You want to give a little insight on kind of what your experience has been, working with the different age groups?
Yeah, it's pretty common knowledge that different age groups should receive different advice, right? So common knowledge, right? Younger, you should be investing more aggressively, and the older you are, should be invest more conservatively, right? Because just given you're older in retirement, you want to not put a lot of risk in the stock market, right? Maybe more in bonds, and just because you have to live off those assets, right? From a general perspective, in general, if you had to kind of say something that appealed to the masses, typically if you're younger, you're a bit more aggressive. As we age, we get more conservative, and while that's not everyone, that hits a good big broad audience. But it's also not just the advice that is different, right? It's also how that advice is delivered or communicated. Right? And here's some facts here. So just for the baby boomers, right, born between 1946 and 1964, they usually prefer to discuss their finances, in person, right? They're more old-fashioned. They want to see that person, right, and really see what advice, if it makes sense for them or not.
Shake hands and
But Generation Z, right, born between anywhere 1997 to 2012, they prefer to check their phone, right? They're more adapted to technology, right? They want to go on their laptop. They don't want to have that conversation, right? What's the point if I can just go on my phone? It can save me some time. I get my answer right then and there. Right. So there's a lot of things that are changing, right? Especially technology is always growing, right? The finance industry is always evolving with new laws and new technology, right? New softwares that we're using, right? And trying to communicate that to the client. So it's always evolving, but it's also a big part of it is communicating that type of advice to the client.
I mean, I can definitely say that I've even noticed the difference between myself and how I like to communicate compared to even like my kids. And like, of course, and my kids are they're hitting that. I don't even know what they're calling the new generation. I think it's Generation Alpha now, right? And they're falling into that Generation Alpha, where my kids are perfectly happy to just text or my daughter now is doing where she's like sending recorded messages, so like she's not even doing the text. It's like either talk to text, or she's actually like hitting record and then sending me the recorded message via text. Right, where I would much rather pick up the phone. Like, I want to talk to somebody. Like, I would rather make the call. But my wife, who's only a couple of years younger than I am, she likes to text also. She likes to text, and she would rather send a text versus picking up the phone. In fact, she prefers that I call like her doctors, because she doesn't like to pick up the phone. And I've heard that like a lot of like the younger millennials, and as we're getting into the next generations, there's actually this like this anxiety of getting on the phone, taking calls, or making phone calls. And so it's just really, really interesting to see how that's playing out, especially in like a very high service related industry like ours.
I think just a great benefit just working at Apriem, right, is we have all those platforms. When I mean platforms is text messaging, emails, mail, phone calls, right? We all have those forms of communicating with our clients. Right. And it's not just I'm just dealing with younger individuals, right? I'm dealing with a lot of retirees, right? People approaching retirement, and of course younger. So it's also, again, a great benefit for me personally to have. I can text a person, or I can, I'm always on the phone calling clients too. So I think it's kind of unfortunate for the younger generations to like they feel nervous, or they don't want to talk on the phone anymore. I think that's always just a good personal.
Like, you're missing this kind of personal touch and feel. Right?
Growth aspect you can get from that.
I think what's really interesting, and probably pretty interesting for listeners, is that the ability to text with clients, well, the technology has been there for a long time. The industry has not, because there's so much that circulates around regulation and sending something written, right? I mean, it's written, and there's lots of regulation and rules and laws, and it's well, if you're going to send a text message, it's not, we can have a whole bunch of disclosures, in the text after that. And so it's only really been in the past couple of years that advisors have been allowed to text directly with clients. I think again that just has to do with like the evolution of technology, because now technology can like track and save all that data, right?
So sure.
I know we have these different forms of technology, right? And technology has changed, and it's obviously changed the way that lots of people want to communicate, right? Or are comfortable communicating, right? I think there's a lot of folks that are comfortable, doing a Zoom appointment now who, 3-4 years ago that they never would have done it, or never even thought they'd be capable of doing it. But outside of technology, right, there's other changes that have happened along the way. Any kind of noteworthy, events, that you can think of, or that you've kind of noticed have been things that have maybe like changed people's experiences in the way that they think in comparison to the different generations?
I would say definitely, the baby boomers were affected, Cold War, Vietnam War, right? Millennials, definitely 9/11, the wars in Iraq, Afghanistan. And then, recently, Generation Z is going to be COVID, right? That's definitely a big one. But those are definitely the big three there. When it comes to, those different experiences.
I think when we think about those kinds of big life events or experiences that happens, I think it's important we kind of, focus on how did those different times affect the way people thought about money, right? And how has that carried on since then? I recently was looking at when May Day had occurred, which was in May of 1975, and essentially what happened was when fixed commissions went away, and then discount brokerage was all of a sudden something that was available, and it kind of struck me how limited the ability for people the regular everyday person, it was for them to actually invest. Because back when they had these fixed commissions, if you wanted to buy one share, you would pay the same commission or the same price to effect that trade as somebody that was buying 10,000 shares of a company, right? And I mean, at the time, you're talking, it was like $100 plus to play. It would be the trade cost. Like today, we're getting free trades. So you get on your app on your phone, and you can place a trade, instantaneously at no cost, right? But prior to May of 1975, everyone paid the same fee for trades. It was just this fixed fee, and you think about paying $100 or more for a single trade, and somebody that only has $1,000 is paying from a percentage standpoint, right? That's a lot more if I'm buying $1,000 worth of stock than somebody that's buying $10,000 worth of stock or $100,000 worth of stock. So it definitely pushed the everyday person out of the ability of having access to investing, and so like my kids' ability to access investing is very different than what my parents' ability to access investing was when they were the same age as my kids, right? Or even when they were 18, 19 years old. Just for comparative purposes, I went and looked at how much is would $100 of buying power be worth today as compared to 1975, and it was like $590 is the difference. So imagine paying $590 to place a trade. And a few years ago you were like, oh, it's $7 to place a trade, and a few years prior to that it was like $14 to place a trade. And a few years prior to that it was a bit more, and it's just come down over time. But it's really opened this world of investing up to the masses. So I think it's still relatively new, in reality.
Yeah, I think to kind of tie on that, just given the younger generations, right? You have your phone app. It's so much easier to gain information, right? Whether it be the news, any type of social media, right? And there's definitely pros and cons, for that, technology. But the biggest pro is that you're always, updated on those current events. You always know what's going on in the world, and that's always a good thing, right? You don't want to be living in a little bubble. You want to see, what else is going out in the world. But definitely the con is, you're more acceptable to those social media influencers or whoever it may be, and it's possible that they may be giving false information, right? And when it comes to investing, you don't want to get invested on some type of information, right? You want to make sure what you're investing in, why, and that's definitely the most important, right? You want to know what you're getting investing in.
Yeah, I think if anything, that immediate access and the ability for all of us to communicate so quickly with people we don't even know kind of perpetuates that you mentioned earlier, like FOMO, right? Or that fear of missing out that can occur, right? And it can really bolster expectations and excitement, and that by itself can cause some danger because, next thing you know, we're taking investment advice from, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, I love softball. You know what I mean?
No, for sure.
I'm joking, but some username, some pseudonym that's online, and we're like, oh yeah, this person sounds like they know what they're talking about.
Yeah, and kind of just like a fact here, right? Just going off that is 35% of Gen Zers turn to TikTok for financial advice. I know there's a lot of things going around TikTok. If they're going to ban it or not, that's a conversation for another day.
Right.
But it's a big platform, right? Especially for younger individuals. There's a lot of people on it. I'm not on it.
Right.
But it can really dictate, especially a younger mind, what they should be doing. Like, oh, I have $100. Like, let's do this with that. Right. Without their parents even really knowing, which is kind of scary. But on the flip side, right? Another fact here is 82.8% of the baby boomer generations do not use social media for financial advice, right? So you can kind of see the big sway there, right, in those generations and how they view their finances and what they should be doing, right?
Right.
So again, just some facts there, but pretty big differences there when it comes to the generation.
I think it's really interesting because it's one of those, it really makes you think, right? Because that's not going to go away. Right. And so just, digging our heels in and saying like you shouldn't get your information from there, that's bad, doesn't actually fix the issue or the problem. Right. And so how do we as advisors or, as a community, as a whole, how do we address the fact that that's an issue? Because if I'm posting a video on TikTok or Instagram Reels or YouTube TV or whatever, or not TV, YouTube, it's called YouTube Shorts, right? YouTube Shorts. If I'm posting videos on any of those, I'm very, very aware of what I'm saying. I'm very cautious about not giving misleading information. I'm very cautious about the information itself not being considered a recommendation to buy something, right? This is not investment advice, right? It's education. But if you're not in the industry and you're not licensed, you don't even know that you can't be saying those things. Mm-hmm. And there's so many people that can just post a video offhand and say whatever they want, mm-hmm. And put whatever information they want out there that aren't licensed, aren't educated, and don't even know that they're saying things that they shouldn't be saying. Mm-hmm. It's an issue. It's a problem. Yeah. But anyway, I don't know the answer, but I think it's one of those things where, how do we as a whole, as a society, learn to adjust and evolve so that people are safe and protected still, mm-hmm. without removing their rights.
Yeah. I would say too, to kind of finish up on that main point, again, I know technology can be viewed differently, right?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
For those different generations, but there's a lot of things Gen Zers can benefit from technology, and a big one is automatic enrollment in their retirement plans through their employers, right? A cool stat here too is that 62% of Gen Z workers have participated in the workplace retirement plan, and this is way ahead any other generation, right?
That's fantastic.
So again, I don't know if that's directly from social media on their phones, right, getting information there, but that's also again, all these meetings that we have with mm-hmm. younger individuals is, are you in your company's 401k plan, are you maxing out your benefit, are you getting some type of match percentage, right? We want to make sure that we're doing that every year, because all we talk about is that compounding interest and having that invested over 30, 40 years that can really, really benefit you.
Really add up as time goes on.